The external zodiac is the analog of the consciousness of man, and the zodiac is within us. Please, can you explain this?
Right. Now that goes back, that is the center of my work on the divination arts, in which, unlike all the astrologers of the world, so even some of them use the word psychological in their titles and all. I don't know why, because that's it. That's the title and that's all you get. The real unpacking of this term psychological astrology is rooted in Jung, but it's even rooted in other things as well. And to cut right to the Hermetic truism, as above, so below, if you really apply these Hermetic teachings, you get to this theory that I have that basically talks about an inner zodiac. And when I mean that even the divisions of the number 12 are really psychic phenomena. The number 12 is an archetype. Right, so you get, oh, I know about the archetypes, Michael, shadow, that, animus, yeah, and the number 12. No, never caught that one. Yeah, and the number 7, right? No, didn't remember that. Young, I don't remember Young talking about that. Well, 3 and 4, even 10. I don't get you, mate. Yeah. See, so as I said, all knowledge is limited. All knowledge has a boundary around it. And then from that point on, it doesn't expand, it shrinks. I'm trying to expand some of these paradigms. The number 10 is an archetype. The number 12 is an archetype, and they're in here first. Then, by the act of projection, which is Jung's great discovery, we project it out. And we were doing it long before Jung ever lived. He just found out about a phenomenon that's been active from the dawn of time. We get the night sky, we get the zodiac based on this projection. Now, although I must say, that's not the reason we then started looking up to the heavens. That comes before. It is part of the trauma thing we just mentioned, because, and it's not specific, even the people who are the specialists on this can't really give you a date. Some say about 3,000 years BC, but it's really indistinct. We're still looking for the dates. It's, could have happened, it could have happened to launch the Bronze Age. But again, that's a whole separate study. They came a fearsome comet. Remember I talked about one of the cults being the cult of Set? That's often mistaken for the cult of Saturn. Both those cults originate in the coming of a comet that was seen all over the world, and it basically destroyed the planet. You can't even imagine what it meant. The petrochemicals that fell from the comet's tail, it's like something in Lord of the Rings. It just decimated people. It was almost like a laser. They were just poisoned and fell to the ground, and they didn't know what it was. And that's just, part of the ferocity of the comet. The Chinese had it. That's why they have the dragon ceremonies and all. Every part of the world had it. As I said, the Celtic myths, you can't understand Celtic myth until you understand comets. It's all an allusion to comets. And it's also, spiked with that fear we talked about on the psychological level. But just keep it to the physical event. So nobody really did look up to the heavens before the coming of the comet. But after the comet wrecked the earth, the features we see, mountains were caused by it. Mountains is the dragging of the crust. Can you believe that the Himalayas and the Alps were caused by this thing? It's like you dragging on a blanket, right? Just with a claw, and part of it is raised and the other part is flattened. Do you realize the oceans? Do you realize the lakes? The weird erratic boulders that you find all over the planet? When you look next at, one of those landscapes or plains, something like the Grand Canyon, try to think of the almighty winged dragon, like Tolkien's Smaug. You wouldn't believe how our mythology and our stories are permeated with reference to this, which is on their broomsticks. There's an article I wrote, we can get into all of this. It's called From Heaven to Earth. It's on the Female Illuminati site. It's one of the articles. Check that out. So the comet goes through the heavens, and for the first time, man looked up in awe and in terror. And then his religions begin, because now the idea is to appease the god that is the comet. Because the comet came, and then there was other celestial events. We don't know if they were caused by the comet. They may have been, actually. But other cosmic events took place in the form of conjunctions between Saturn, Mars, and Venus. And this was like a big, this is like, when you at Halloween or other events like the 4th of July, when people set up fireworks and they have them at these different venues in Vegas or wherever the hell. Once a year, they'll have a big thing, fireworks display. Happens multiple times, happens in China, all over the world. This is all to celebrate what I'm talking about and try to replicate it. We fire our rockets into space, for fun, and these fireworks in order to atavistically remember an actual event that was 100 times as glorious and frightening with this great conjunction. Got all the information on it in the websites. So the comet created a priesthood, a whole cult of the comet, and it was called Set, right? This is the word that the god Set, in other words, being entirely based on comet worship, right? In the diminutive, just like Horus's sun worship or whatever, right? So the cult of Set were the priesthood. They weren't evil or anything. They were the priesthood who worshipped the comet and its ways, thinking of it as a great serpentine god in the sky. It would take too long to explain, but the article's right there for people. Then you get these other constellational occurrences in the cosmos that made all of these weird shapes because the discharges between the three conjuncting planets caused unbelievable fireworks display, an incredible electromagnetic. It was like, an IMAX screen, and the whole world saw it. And so the whole of mythology, all the images that you could think of, Arthur and his sword, St. George and the dragon, Mother Mary on the crescent moon, and it's all listed in the article. All of it, absolutely all of it, comes from these two events. And then the priesthoods were formed in order to pacify and do certain rites that would stop the comet coming again. We've done something to hurt the gods. There they are giving us all these weird hieroglyphics in the sky. We can't decode it. So priesthoods and churches, what we would know today as churches, but the great temples of the ancient world, often the temples are physically emblazoned with those symbols, once you know what you're looking at. And this went on for centuries of the attempt to decode. So you had to have specially gifted people who could tell you what that great chariot-looking thing in the sky or that weird Sagittarius Bowman, so it came from astrology and the assignment of different signs. But where did the signs themselves come from is never asked. This is the origin of the signs of the zodiac, and there's 88 constellations, not 12. And they came from these cosmic events, as did the idea to look up in the morning to the sun or to venerate. And what you're really thinking is, I hope the comet doesn't come again and kill off billions of people. That wasn't billions at that time, but to them it would have seemed like a Holocaust, an apocalypse. Well, the four horsemen of the apocalypse are symbols coming from this event. The sword coming out of the mouth of a speaker, the great Masonic diadems. There's not a symbol that you can think of, the pillar, the column. You cannot think of one that did not originate from these signs in the sky, symbols in the sky. Right. What's this all got to do with what we're talking about? It made man supernatural. Remember I said he was earthy and he was grounded and he was like a gardener of the earth. His upward looking to cosmos and the after effects of these devastating cataclysmic events, remember I said made the fear he had pathological as opposed to rational, and that made you susceptible to priestly control. It rewrote it gave rise to religion and supernatural, because religion is based on supernatural of looking out and up. This is where it started. It gave rise to cults like the Great Royal Wives, because it turned out, just as a aside to this, just rewrote the history of our world, is that it happened to be found out that women, certain priestess cults at the time, were better interpreters of the signs in the sky than the men turned out to be. Well, first of all, there was a lot of symbols that turned up that men couldn't properly analyze. There's a famous Celtic image. It goes back before the Celts, called the Shiel and a Gig. And it shows a little hobgoblin, with its legs spread, and you see the opening of the vagina. That's just one thing I can think of. How is if a man saw that weird figure in the sky, or some weird lady in the unicorn, I mean, come on. He sees all these symbols, or a Medusan-like being with all of his hair, because the electrical charges look like hair, and a tongue, hanging out like Kali. Chances are a man's interpretation of what they are is going to be kind of crap. And this is exactly what happened. women were able to, they gave plausible, to the traumatized population of that time, what became women's cults. They weren't cults at this time. They became the powerful female cults also from these heavenly events. So we get supernaturalism, we get religion, we get mind control, we get brainwashing, and we get symbolism, and we get the interpretation of symbolism, and we get the projection of a zodiac, because the symbols that populate the zodiac come from this event. But back to the comet. This is the most important thing, because that cult of the comet, the cult of Set, never went away. So when people like me talk about the priesthood of the Illies or the Illuminati, for convenience sake, those are just convenient terms. The real cult, the real Black Lodge, the real super Masonic order is Atnast Setian. There's a fusion, because what will never be told to you by anybody is that Akhenaten was a member of the Set cult. And that's what the Irish Origins books and the female Illuminati work is all to try and explain in detail, so that people can sort of, grasp that. But your question was what? The inner zodiac, yeah, this is its roots. Now, there is a possibility that the zodiac itself that we know, no, not a possibility, it comes from a 7. Right? It comes from a zodiac of 7 signs. And you cannot date that ancient zodiac. It's the zodiac of the stellar cult, and it cannot be dated. It could be as old as 30,000 years. And the astrotheology book goes into this. And that zodiac was centered around the pole, not the ecliptic. So in the evolution of the zodiac, you find out something absolutely amazing. And that the ancient observers, the ancient stellar priesthood, observed the pole movement, can you believe it? And notice that it had what was called 7 stations. And this is why the number 7 has the symbolism attached to it that it still does today, as being this extremely august number. And it was also called the Temple of the Seven Jackals. It was called the Temple of the 7 Crowns. And in the astrotheology book, we have chapters on that. And a lot of the symbolism of that particular earliest zodiac appears on alcohol, on whiskey bottles, on flags. You wouldn't believe. And I get into that. That's why that book exists, is to show you just how this is not dead. Right? This iconography from the earliest old brain, the first projection of the zodiac, corresponded with the polar axis. And that was called well, in Egypt, it's called the Fields of Aru, A-A-R-U. And it's where we get our Elysian Fields. Elysian Fields originally was the circumpolar orbit. And nobody talks about this in astrotheology. You've got to really go to the masters to find it. Books that are now hundreds of years old. And this is the original zodiac, that this got embellished by the solar cult when their god moves on the ecliptic. Just says, well, we're going to throw out the old jackal god, to hell with all that. We're going to put our moon, the lunar cult had their 13 zodiac, the solar one. And so the zodiac we've got is already young. And as I said, the original zodiac had 88. So it evolved out of an old stellar. The stellar cult ruled the world for thousands of years. You could multiply. In fact, the ages of Egypt already triple, right? The ages of the modern world from the time of Rome and Greece to today. You can triple that to just know Egypt. But that's still a very poor reading, because the stellar cult goes 3 times longer than that. It's off the charts. So they started with the 7, and probably they're the ones who widened the zodiac into the 10 or the 13 that came later, and then that was appropriated by the solar cult. But the most important thing to remember is that the number 7 is fundamental to this. And that the original zodiac had 7 animals, 7 poles. So in the Bible, it turns up as the 7 scrolls. In Judaism, it turns up as the 7 candelabra, right? Which already you can find in loads of nursery rhymes and poems. The age of the 7 sons, the 7 brothers, the 7 rivals, the 7 sleepers. C.S. Lewis draws upon it in his Narnia Chronicles. The castle with the 7 turrets. and the 7 knights, the 7 maidens, on and on it goes. Does not pertain to the Western zodiac, the tropical zodiac. And the story of the circumpolar, I had to do 2 volumes on that. They're called the Tree of Life. The Trees of Life double volume is entirely dedicated to an exploration of that original stellar zodiac. What a story it is.